Good afternoon. It is 1 p.m., April 13th. Work session number, I forgot, but that's okay. We'll just keep going until we get a solution. Although that's not what Ted wants to hear right now. What Ted wants to hear is, let's get ourselves where we need to be this afternoon. We do have another work session scheduled for Tuesday as well. And then I think a week or two later, maybe a week later, by design, we are to publish the budget, correct? For the draft budget for public review? It's on the...
It comes pretty fast after we're done.
Yeah, and then, yeah, okay. Okay, without further ado, Ted, you want to have a few opening comments you want to make?
Yeah, you have a new little packet in front of you. First couple pages are things you did in earlier sessions, just keeping that all in front of you in case you need to go back to it. Then third page are all the votes from the last session. You go down the first string of bullets, you'll see it says changes since 4/11. We've talked about before, things continue to move even as we're trying to work through this. A change we made in the budget and op plan was to account for minimum wage impacts in your budgets, which is mostly about rec and parks. We talked last time about the legislation to change compensation for the election judges. That is now built into this picture. We got notice that we received $1 million from the state for the sheriff's headquarters building. So we reduced $1 million of planned bonds and replaced it with state funding. We've set up the fund, and this doesn't impact this in any way you're going to see, but we've set up the fund for the opioid restitution. This is what's called a special revenue fund. There are certain revenues we have that are legally restricted and have to have their own little pot. That's going to be true for this. And the blueprint workforce development question, we have the $1.6 million captured in our grant fund. I think people are still working through exactly how that's all going to be implemented there, right?
That's correct.
So we don't have all the answers yet, but the budgeting part is in place. And we're working on ambulance billing special revenue fund. Again, this is a restricted fund. We have to set up a special place for it. Right now, the focus is on Medicare funding when we get that. Over time, it could be that all ambulance billing will end up here. But in the short term, we're only going to put Medicare here so we can keep track of the transition of all the funding from what was going to Visa to what's in our budget. Then you see your new bottom line. You want to roll that up? FY24 is not actually zero. It's about $20,000 or something like that, right?
27,825.
But it rounds to zero with where we are. Now, in the end, that will have to actually be a zero. Revenues and expenditures have to match for your budget. Then you see where we are based on everything we've done so far for the remaining years of the plan with a but. And that's going to be in the next session. A few things I want to mention. First one being, this is the but. This picture is built on the recordation change that we talked about, but there's not yet been a vote to change the recordation tax or to propose that we're going to propose for changing the recordation tax. Then nothing new here. Just want to come back to when we look at the plan, there are things that are not in here that are still going to need to be part of our thinking at some point. What is our future with blueprint funding? What are we going to take on in connection with developing the new larger landfill space that we have? Commissioner Rothstein last time was talking about Slacks Road improvements. Right now, that's not built into our capital plan, other than the study. And then fire, again, what we're funding right now is intended to fund ambulance services, not firefighting. I think we all know that we're going to be going there someday. That someday is not built into this plan. So it's not necessarily a short-term concern, but just needs to be in mind, if at some point things seem to be accelerating, just want to make sure everybody understands we're not planning for funding that right now. And then the last thing I want to mention, this morning you approved a SNAP grant. There is some speculation that this might continue in the future. We don't know it, we haven't been told it, but there's been some talk. Right now, we don't have any plans for budgeting the match for this. It's not critical that we do, but if the board's thinking is that if this money continues to be available, that we want to continue making the match, then we probably would build in $40,000 a year or something like that. 45 to 50. And with that, we have a lot of things that you said. Here's what we'd like to see. We know what that's done to the bottom line. We know our plan is not balanced. You could tell me otherwise, but my sense is in the next few hours, we're not going to take on enough major decisions to bring this into balance. So it seems to me what we have left is, if between last time and now, any of you have been thinking about something that you're saying, I'm not happy with where that ended, or I wanted this addressed and we haven't talked about it yet, then we need to talk about those things. There might be some cleaning up around the edges of things, but I think we're mostly where we're headed.
One thing that I don't think we talked about, and if we did, I apologize, I just don't remember. Under position requests, I thought we talked most back and forth, but I don't think we talked about recreation and parks, the park technician for 71 grand. And I think, and you guys may correct my memory, 5, 6 years ago, I think they lost some positions at Hashua, and I think they went through COVID where it wasn't being used, and I'm not sure it isn't time to add a position back there.
Yeah, I believe you're right that this position did not get any discussion. Because we've had position losses all through county government. It wasn't unique to rec and parks, but I'm sure they did lose positions. So having a request in front of you doesn't mean it has to get any discussion, but if you want it, now would be a good time.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody else has thoughts one way or the other about that.
I'm sticking to the three themes and figuring out how things fit in are safety, security, education, quality of life. This builds into quality of life for our community,
Oh, yeah.
but it's difficult, because does this outweigh other requirements, especially with safety, security, and education, that I'm still feel like we're woefully short in supporting. I think this is a good idea, but I think that we gotta look, if we're to prioritize safety, security, education, quality of life, or however you want to do it, does this outweigh some of the others, is what I'm thinking through. I don't know what anybody else is.
And the only other question I'd have, we went through COVID and things were less active at Hashua. Will revenues there increase, or not significantly.
Well, I'm sure they will increase from when we were going through the couple of years of, closed down. I don't, do we have any expectations of revenues rising beyond what we had previously?
Not significant.
Right.
And, while Rec and Parks is revenue generating, it only brings in a fraction of.
Oh, I know.
Of the cost.
Right,
It's quality of life.
yeah.
And, yeah, that's, I just, looking through this, I had no's and checks and X's and stuff. I didn't have anything marked
Yeah,
on that, so I wanted to bring it up. And I'd love to mention Eldersburg Library again, but that doesn't fit the group you just said. And I just think sooner or later, that has to be, and it scares me to death when I look at future years. Yeah, they were the two things I thought, one we hadn't talked about, one we beat to death, but I wanted to bring up today.
Yeah,
There is another position that didn't get discussion, and Deb just told me we have a little bit more information. Solid Waste was looking for another
Right.
landfill equipment operator, and they do believe they could increase the tipping fee by $1, that the market would not react negatively to that, which would create enough money to cover this position.
what's the tipping fee right now?
65? 65.
65 ton?
Right, so in a very narrow way, they can create the revenue to cover this, but in a broader way, there's still a very large general fund subsidy to the.
Right.
To the fund.
This one wasn't talked about.
Um,
We didn't talk about that.
I mean, I appreciate the innovation of them thinking about that, but, you've said often, it's not their money, we gotta look at this holistic. So if they can increase the tipping fee by $1, there may be a better use of using that, to something else. Or is that money put
Well,
away into enterprise that it can only be used for?
The tipping fee would have to be used in the enterprise fund, but you could
Yeah.
reduce your general fund transfer to the,
Yeah,
to the to
so there's
landfill.
other ways to use that money, so,
The setting of the
Yes.
tipping fees, is that a board decision?
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Yes.
And that is for county residents, that is for commercial?
Both, yes. And this board has not been yet through any big discussion on landfills, and there's lots of things to think and talk about. But on the idea of tipping fee, in a perfect world, we would set the tipping fee to cover the cost of the landfill, and there would be no need for a subsidy. The problem is, we do run into market problems where
Right.
somebody has a choice. If the tipping fee goes too high, then volume goes away. So there's not a lot of room. So he said $1 is available. I don't know if he's saying that's as far as we could go, but we definitely don't have infinite flexibility, or even a lot.
the last time we made adjustments to tipping fees, because we have, what's the history over the last few years?
I had not heard that we had any negative impact, but
No, I apologize, not negative impact, but just
When have we-
changes to
Oh.
tipping fees.
When did we make the last changes?
Last one was fiscal year '21. We went-
Was
What
2
do I-
years ago?
It was 64, we went to 65.
okay, in '21, went from 64 to 65.
Yeah. That's what I thought, okay.
And recycling?
And the capacity, there's the capacity there. Another operator doesn't help with less transfer or doesn't change the philosophy on how the landfills run right now, because we can't afford to keep filling it up, right?
If I'm understanding right, sometimes the question will come up, well, wouldn't it be a good thing if solid waste went somewhere else? Problem, and this is much like utilities, there are a lot of fixed costs. So you can reduce some variable costs and lose revenue, but end up in a more difficult situation. And I think with solid waste, that's a big consideration.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can think through that.
For the sake of discussion, I know we're looking at a recordation change from $5 to $6. What if we made that $6.25?
It's another million, right?
Because again, the way we're talking about this, we're trying to avoid having to hit people with property tax rates and income. And so if we're able to accumulate the revenue in a different way,
Well, the revenue, I mean, that's still taxes.
well, right,
So-
but it's,
Oh, I know.
Yeah, I
right.
mean, so we're
'Cause-
still,
but it's,
That would be the question, as Ted brought up at the beginning, we haven't voted to do this. Are we comfortable that we're going to? And is there a tipping point of,
well,
like, you know, all five say yes on $1 and only 2 say yes on $1.25?
right.
comfort and acceptance are two separate things. And
And I'm just curious to
I've
see
got
what the,
reluctance on it, but I'm not saying no, I just,
I think it would be good to settle this matter, because if we're not going to move ahead with this,
This
then
changes.
we need to change the bottom line so you know where you
Exactly.
are.
Now, Ted, just out of curiosity, to the point of recordation, where does that put us with the rest of the state? I know we had talked about that the other day, but where does that put us, say, at the 6 versus the 6.25?
Was it you that was looking? Somebody told me they were looking.
Taylor did. She found a really good chart of all the counties.
There are a
And keep in
few.
mind, oh, sorry, most counties have recordation as well as a transfer tax. So if you count just recordation, Carroll's near the highest, but if you count recordation and transfer, we're way below,
and we don't have transfer tax.
because we don't
right?
have a transfer.
Right.
Gotcha, okay.
So that's why sometimes, to me, it's hard to apples.
Right.
You know, it's apples to other fruit because of other taxes and other ways of income that they bring in.
Some way to send a link to
Or
Ed.
revenue that they bring in.
Okay. We can print out the chart if you'd like, or we can possibly have Deb, if you want, pull it up and look at it on the screen, if you're interested.
Sure, just out of curiosity.
So what's the website?
I'll drop it in the presentation file. Deb, just give me 1 second.
Okay.
So,
Some of the makers, everything.
It
I would
isn't.
remember.
It's-
you say it's not from Mako?
That's what she said. She has her own special source.
I know, what's up with that?
It's a title company, but they
Okay.
serve the entire state, and
Yeah.
it's for their customers, so.
I
No,
was gonna
that's
say,
I-
they care.
Yeah, I fact-checked it, and most of them
That's-
are right, so.
pretty clever. Don't go past Mako, but I like that. Okay, so I guess, let's look at this, because, yeah, there's counties that have so much other ways of bringing revenue.
No, I just
And
don't
they say,
know
oh,
what
we're
to call
low
it.
here, but, yeah, that's nice. but
Gradation
they're
amounts.
Gouging people in other taxes and other ways. Maybe gouging is the wrong word.
It's
I
at the
want to
bottom.
respect everybody.
Oh, there he is, very bottom.
Yeah, I made it, obviously.
Technology cool.
Oh, boy. Really?
Boy, that's not-
Don't worry, Ed, even I can't see this one.
Thank you.
Maybe we could just read them, the ones that are above Carroll County.
Be careful, some of them say per 500 and some of them say per 1,000. So there's one that says $7 per 1,000, but that's still $3.50 per, in comparison to ours.
Oh, he's on a field trip.
Frederick is higher, with $7 per 500, and they don't have a transfer tax. Frederick is higher at $7 per 500 and no transfer tax. Correct.
$7 per thousand, but they also have a transfer tax. I see.
There are only 5 jurisdictions that don't have a transfer tax. And of course, there's a second page too. Yeah.
It looks like Montgomery County has their own regulations. Talbot is higher with $6 for 500. Prince George's is not very small. They have big transfer tax. That's a pretty cool trip. Thanks.
You know, and you all are very fortunate in this kind of stuff, how quickly we can provide this. There was a time when this would have been literally true. Somebody would have had to go back to the office, get on the computer, find some stuff, print out something, and then bring it down to you.
Well, weren't you there when the wheels started turning around? I'm just asking.
I was.
I assumed all 6 are on the internet ignoring us, but evidently not.
They have potentially a lot of work to do. They want to make sure they understand what's happening.
No, that's really helpful.
I could chip in for one of them to get on in Facebook and bash you.
Who did we assign Facebook page?
So, if you go back to where we were, and like Commissioner Bigliotti said, the 5 1/4, what does that do?
Well, 6 1/4.
6 1/4, I apologize. What does that do right now? Because there's still
Yeah,
expenses.
it would give you, in an ongoing way, about $730,000 additional revenue.
Okay, that's right, okay. 1% is roughly 3 million,
Right.
okay.
And what does that do to the bottom line? Unless I just missed that.
Nope, we haven't
Oh,
got
okay.
that.
I can put it in if you'd like, so you can see what it does to the bottom line.
Sure, if that's no trouble, thank you.
So similar to what Commissioner Kyler said, as far as adjusting or putting recordation tax in place, I would want to look at, the schools and other things as well. I don't like that we're still not funding their requests, and we're just not the experts right now. I mean, they are, and it doesn't even touch Blueprint, which is going to kick us in the shins real hard. That's the problem, so. Along with other things, but I think, Ted, what you're recommending, if we look at recordation right now, is there,
I'm comfortable with the 6. I just don't know if we want to get ahead of ourselves too much with the recordation, because it's not realized money. It's all dependent upon the housing market and what happens in the future. So
I know,
I think 6 is still a respectable number when you look at that chart.
And
So
to,
that's the question, that's my answer.
Yeah, I agree. Just before you go, Ted, just a question for you. Because I don't disagree with that. Is transfer tax the same, I mean, as far as the, you know, when I saw 1% or 1.5%, we don't have it, and it's hard to compare us to others. I'm just curious how transfer tax is calculated out of somebody's pockets.
So,
Is it-
so 1% transfer tax would be the same as the 5 per 500,000 that we had in the past as recordation, correct?
pretty much, there might be some nuances in how it's applied,
Okay.
but
Yeah, yeah, I'm not sure.
years ago, we actually went to the General Assembly to try to get authority for a transfer tax. And at the time, we were building our projected numbers off of recordation. And to Commissioner Guerin's point about, we don't know what these numbers are going to be from revenue, that's always there, but it's a good reminder that we don't know any of these numbers. From, you know, what is property tax going to bring in, what's income tax going to bring in, what's recordation. So this, we can never look ahead and say, this is what it's going to be. This is just what we think with what we know today.
So, so why don't we start with an acceptance level that it looks like we're getting towards an agreement. And then from there, if we need to work, we can. But right now, because I'm in kind of the same boat with Commissioner Guerin, if we start with 6% and then put that in place, work through this, and if we need to go further, we'll have that conversation when necessary.
I'm okay with that.
So is there a motion
Over the $6?
for the
$6? Motion. Motion to make it $6. Recordation, $6.
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second to increase the recordation tax from $5.500 to $6.500. Is there any further discussion on that? Seeing here none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I apologize. Did you,
Yes.
Mike? Good? Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
said aye, I'm sorry.
Okay, nope, that's okay.
So we got a majority.
It's just, when we got a motion and a second over there, I got them both
I know,
ways very
I know.
quickly.
You're like an owl.
Okay, so we did what Ted told us to do.
And our bottom line is 0.
Well, yeah. But I still want education funded,
Move that.
and I know they're being funded,
Quarter.
you know,
I don't think it should be in the bottom line.
12.4 as opposed to the 13.4. My concern, again, is that they're not being funded to the needs that they have today. Not even dealing with Blueprint.
You're talking about that $1 million?
$1 million. I mean, it wasn't just a made-up number. They laid it out for us and the impact it's gonna have. And I went back to them last night and I said, listen, could you share with us what would not be done out? And they're like, this is the priority list, and it's not like you could just pull something out, so.
And it's positions and negotiations,
it's-
so
Yep,
us doing one-time money is no help to them
That's
right
correct.
now.
that's correct.
And again,
They said the impact would be on salaries, that's right.
yes, and which is ongoing. And then Commissioner Guerin, and I know you've been big on this, and I've lost the argument every time. I still wonder why EMS needs a data analysis and a billing technician. I don't see particular the data guy as a full-time, one-year job. I don't know why we need both positions. But, like I say, I've said that before.
Well, I mean, we've created a lot of positions here during this budget process. And we've talked about how fire and EMS, police, state's attorney's
Yep.
office, we've classified them in their own category sometimes. So I consider those two positions important. But, I mean, we do have a lot of positions that don't go filled. And if that's the case, we can always reprogram dollars or not spend that money, or decide we don't need to fill that position.
Yeah.
There's so much happening between
Oh,
now
I
and
know.
July, though. That's my big concern. And, you know, I haven't had that conversation with the chief. Like I said I would, I just haven't had it yet. I know for sure I'll be having it by the next Wednesday. So we can have a further discussion on that. But, there's so much going on, I just don't want us to be caught flat-footed. I mean, sure, we can take money out of reserve contingency and fund things, but those aren't ongoing, you know, that we're dealing with.
Can we ask him
Yeah, I
how
will.
soon they need it, and do they need both? Because again, like you say, if they don't need it till January, then it's half.
I think that's the million-dollar question, is the timing of everything.
Yes.
So yes, as promised, I will have that conversation. I just haven't had a chance to have it.
Is he around? Are you looking? If Chief is around,
Well, I think he's already been very clear about the fact that he wants these two positions.
Oh, I know.
I think he's doing
Right.
incredible work for us, trying to time things out. So I don't
Yep.
want to put him on the spot in terms of timing.
And I understand, and, which is the job, but right now, the library's upset, the sheriff's upset, the schools are upset, and,
I
and-
think these positions are critical. I think these positions are
Yeah,
critical.
no, and if they
Um,
are, they are.
I'm willing to concede that timing, your
that's a different
concern's
story.
timing, and I
Yes.
completely understand that. So I will certainly honor my promise and have that conversation with him.
Yeah, I'd say the timing of when we do this in '24 is really not the big question for us, because if we're going to do it sometime in '24, and it's in '25, '26,
It's
27, then we're
ongoing.
back to the same place anyway.
True.
You know, all we have is, 2 months savings, or 6 months savings, or something like that.
And as I said last week, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just knew Ted was going to say that.
Yeah. And, boards have said before, we'll fund it for half of the year, which you could do, but again, it's just,
Yeah.
I see Ted's point.
And this is, when I talk about making bad budget decisions, this is actually a fairly common one. You'll have a county council going over county executive's budget, and they're just trying to get to a number, and they say, okay,
Right.
well, let's budget 7/12 of a position.
Oh, yeah.
And it's going to make it work that year, but
Yeah.
it leaves them with
Oh.
the same problem I was talking about.
I agree. I just look at, some got half, some got nothing. And,
You're talking about the funding itself, just funding. You're talking about just funding.
yeah.
So-
Yeah, like for instance,
I-
in safety, state's
I
attorney,
know, I
judges,
know.
the sheriff, we cut all of them.
What would be interesting, now, I don't disagree, and I 100% agree with you, is we have determined through the county what positions are best to be outsourced and then best to be, part of our county. And there's a cost and a risk associated with that. A data analyst may be outsourced, I don't know. And instead of 80,000, it could be 20,000 if they're outsourced, because
I thought we
Data
approved
analytics.
outsourcing of billing.
We do have people
Well-
working within the Department of Public Works and other places that are
that
contract
are
employees.
outsourced.
Okay, billing,
Say again?
billing is outsourced. The position we have and the position we're asking for is a spot between the billing company and us. So I mean, you're right, even though we're talking about this. I want to go back to something you said about, some got half, some got all. I think you should be careful about thinking about it that way, because when we say got half, you're responding to what somebody who asked for and how much they asked. Not everybody asked, and people asked for different things. And also need to be careful we don't set up an incentive for some people who would think this way to say, okay, well, if I'm going to get half of what I asked for, I'm going to ask for twice as much,
Yep.
and then I'll get what I want.
Yep. Yeah, and I think we've talked of trying not to tie it to any kind of a formula, because we're creating a precedence that we, and next year is more scary, and I don't think the state is gonna come to their senses on Blueprint. I
Nope.
really don't, and that means next year, we physically cannot possibly fund it. We can't, we could double taxes.
That's why, going back to education, if we don't provide that additional $1 million, it's dealing with salaries. And, you know, we have enough challenges with retention. Now, some people say, oh, teachers aren't leaving, and so, that's regardless. We have enough challenges because we recruit well, we train, and we work to retain. And that $1 million is associated with salaries across the board. And I would like to see that put back in. The two things, I mean, the library, it stinks. I would love to see the library moving, but as shared, if we're gonna do a study, we better be prepared to allocate money to build, and we're not prepared. Now, next year, throughout, we could have those conversations. I think we made the appropriate adjustments for the library, as they've asked, and we've had those crosstalks. I don't think we've made the necessary adjustments for education and the sheriff. So I want us to take a little deeper look into
And that's,
education and
and
sheriff.
that's all but, and the sheriff and education's all but $2 million. Say $1.8 million, $1.9 million.
Right.
So, I guess I understand, but where's it come from? Because I don't think any of us seem too inclined to cut anything.
Ted, I have a quick question, if I might. So we're looking at various items, be it nonprofits, be it positions and such. For a number of different organizations like Economic Development and Rec Council, they've got grants that they're giving out to various nonprofits and such. Is that their determination that they put that in as the grant, or how's that calculated and decided?
For the most part, I would say it's a decision a board made at some time.
At some point.
I think we've occasionally been surprised in economic development by something, but not big numbers.
Okay, now if we were hypothetically to adjust any of those and say remove any of those, would that money then go back into those departments, or is that money that could be utilized elsewhere?
No, well, my starting point would be, if we're not going to fund something, then it has nothing to do with their budget anymore, and they go to the bottom line and be part of all your other decisions.
Okay, thank you.
I guess, and on that, how specific are some of the grants? If they didn't pass the money through, would we still get the grant?
Well, we're granting the money to other nonprofits.
Yeah.
It's coming from us.
So you're
Some
using
of
the
it.
term grant, but you don't mean grant.
I don't mean a grant and no.
Okay, gotcha.
So-
That threw me off too.
Yeah, so what are we talking about? Are we talking about?
Money that we're giving
Money, not
departments to
grants.
give to nonprofits.
That we give out to some other
Okay,
nonprofits.
okay.
I guess technically they're grants as
Yeah,
well.
grants gets used in different ways,
Yeah.
but I think the focus here is, there are some places where there is no grant, there's no grant process, there's no competition. We're
Got
just
it.
saying, here's $5,000 toward what you're doing.
Correct.
There's not a lot of those things, but
Yeah.
there are a few.
Gotcha.
And I'm not suggesting those would get us to the finish line of what you're looking at, but I will say that in looking at some of these, and I'm still kind of reviewing a few, I know Commissioner Vigliotti and I were talking about a couple of them earlier. I think some of them might really be worth looking at because, to your point about safety and education, and yes, it is quality of life, and I will include those in that on part of that. I think the challenge is some of them have been funded at numbers that I have to at least fiscally question when we're looking out for the people's money. It's nothing against those organizations, it's just a reality check of, and you said it the other day yourself, Commissioner Kyler, why can't they go out and fundraise? And that was a fair assessment, and I think, that's kind of where we may need start pulling some money. It's low-hanging fruit, it's not going to solve it, but I think it's something we should consider looking at over the next day and even maybe Tuesday, just to clean up a few things.
And I think if we don't do it in the budget process, we need to look at in the coming year, saying, what are you willing to do? What are you willing to give back? What are you willing to fundraise?
So,
I
yeah.
agree.
Because, yeah, I don't disagree either. Part of it is not just the expectation, but the partnership that they have with some of the problems, like that Circle of Caring, like their engagements in that, you know, Access Carol, their engagements in that allow us to make an easier decision on providing funding. There's others that may not, and I'm not gonna, you know, throw them out now because I'd have to look at the list, but there's some that kind of are clear, and then you're right, there's some that, yeah, we should take a hard look, because just because we did doesn't mean we should continue.
And it's something, and I agree with you completely, it's one of those things that if we're all potentially interested in going that route in the next day or so, I can finish pulling some reports, because just putting it out there with all of them, you know, all these guys have 990s, and we can pull up and see what their revenue is every year, how their expenditures are, and so forth and so on. And I realize for some, we're a very tiny piece of that revenue. I know they appreciate it, and we appreciate all that they do for the community, but when we're talking about heavy lifting of everything from education and so forth, I think we really have to question, is that the best use of the public's money? It's nothing against them. It's just a case of, is that really the best option for that funding?
And an idea came up in there somewhere, just so you're all comfortable. If you're ever looking at cutting funding somewhere that would impact a revenue, we will always tell you, if you cut that dollar, you're also going to lose this 50 cents or 25 cents, so you know what the actual net benefit is.
Right.
I couldn't agree with Commissioner Gordon more, and I've committed myself to taking a look at some of these as well. But then I think Commissioner Rothstein, what you're saying also is that, yeah, there's money that we give to nonprofits that do the job maybe better than we could, and that's a different category. But
Right.
I think there are instances out there that, as commissioners, we owe it to our county taxpayers to look at where some of these funds are going, and if they had their choice, whether they be going to the sheriff's department or the school system, that'd probably be their choice, as opposed to where they might be going now. And I do feel as though that's what people come to expect out of a new board, you know, take a fresh look at things. I know time is dwindling on that process, so I'm in the process of taking a look at some things myself
'Cause,
now, but
yeah,
now's the time, I guess.
I agree, and if we look at the 10 nonprofits that we're funding, although it's not dollar for dollar, but there are some that they add value for us. But, you know, if I have to choose between Magic, which is a very good organization, and funding salaries for our teachers, I want to fund salaries for our teachers to make sure that our teachers are the best in our school system. You know, or Magic against having a salary for keeping a deputy on the streets, especially some of the conversations that we're having most recently.
Right.
So again, it's not going to be dollar for dollar. We know that. It's much less, but, and I just don't have the list in front of me, they all have a purpose. And some of them may just have to take a pause from our dollars for a year, 2 years, 3 years, X amount, until we get through the unknown, unless Ted has a crystal ball about Blueprint, you know, and all of income tax. I mean, we gotta make those decisions, and those decisions, again, just because they're in place now doesn't mean they have to stay in place tomorrow. And I am very open to that, because I want to see funding. I want to see full funding for our education and our sheriff.
On the nonprofits, just want to make sure we're clear, we've had different discussions that maybe don't match up perfectly. We've talked about having 10 nonprofits that we fund. Those are the 10 where there's actually a budget line where you can see, here are dollars going to Target.
Right.
But then, as Commissioner Gordon was bringing up, there are some other nonprofits that don't have their own budget line, but are getting line through somebody else, money through somebody else's budget. That's a smaller number, and it's smaller dollars, but the number of nonprofits isn't 10, it's
Right.
15 or something.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, we can look at the nonprofits now,
Just have a, go ahead.
you know, which is important. I mean, we got to do it, you know. We can pull them up and see what they look like and make them green, amber, and red. And, you know.
Deb sent you an email today about the, earlier today about nonprofits that are getting funding through somebody else. Do
Yes.
you all have that with you?
I do in front of me, yes.
I can pull it up.
Okay. Quick question while we're doing that. Is there any way, well, maybe do that and then I'll have you do the second part. Is there any way to pull up numbers-wise, to Commissioner Rothstein's point, how far of a deficit, I guess I'll use that word, are we on the education and the sheriff right now? Just out of curiosity, what's that total that we're off by?
I think Kenny said 1.8.
It's $1.8 million, I think.
Based on what they requested?
Yes.
Okay, well, they requested, the school board, they requested 6.7, and then we reduced it by $1 million.
correct. The
So they got an additional 5.7.
Okay, it's rough $1 million there. And what are we off with the sheriff?
And then the sheriff they got half of, that's, let me find it.
1.695.
800 and,
Yeah.
about 850,000
Yeah.
in the first
So
year,
about
and
eight-
growing at
so
4%.
We're missing half of that. So we're looking at 1.847,
1.85,
1.85,
yeah.
okay.
And I know just to some people just words, but I want to come back to this again. We're not cutting anything. In
No.
both cases, we're increasing funding to these agencies, just not as much as they wanted.
Correct.
I know, but I want to see that added back.
So I have a,
And I want to figure out an equation
Okay, so,
for a formula to get that 1.85 back.
I have a scenario that we might play out if you guys are interested. I was thinking about this over the last couple of minutes with the wanting to restore the sheriff to full funding, putting the $1 million back into education, the rec and parks position, and then the landfill position. And it goes back into recordation taxes, and it goes back to, well, I mean, whenever you guys are ready, I can lay out what I'm thinking.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Sure, go ahead.
hold on.
Possible to do a split screen of the op plan and the email that you If it's not an easy yes, don't worry about it. I was just wondering.
I could, but I don't know if I'd have enough room to. Okay, so I need to make sure I have some rows here.
Sorry for all the trouble we're causing you.
No, that's
Yeah,
fine.
This is
What we're set up to do.
This is the magic.
This is also a big difference from how it used to be. You know, there'd be a commissioner proposal to do something, and it would literally have to be, well, we'll work on that tonight and come back to you
Right.
tomorrow to give you the information. Also put a lot more constraints on just what ifs. You know, what if we do this? Well, change that a little bit. You know, it's like, okay, give us 2, give us 3, and we'll run the numbers.
Right.
All right, so one of them was reverse the BOE,
Right, give them the 1 million back,
okay?
and then restore the sheriff from half to whole.
Although Ted doesn't want to use the word restore, but give them whole.
Give
Fully
them-
fund his request, his additional request.
Fully fund the sheriff's request, yeah.
I just see the blood pressure moving up a little bit over there, so.
Okay,
I
All
like
right,
that.
then, what is the cost of the rec and parks position?
71?
Rec and Parks is 71,420.
Yeah.
And then the landfill position.
$77,690. Oh, what is it? Yeah. What's that?
I'm sure Bigliotti won the lottery and didn't tell
Well,
us.
Then-
this.
Well, maybe, I don't know.
He's giving us one-time funding.
This actually wouldn't come on here, it would go into an enterprise fund, and then if you did the offsetting change in the
Yeah,
tip
not sure
fee,
where he's
it
Well,
would
and
take
that's-
care of it.
Okay, so that's, all right, so I want to add the tipping fee from 65 to 66.
Okay, I'm gonna put this then somewhere else, I'm gonna take this and put it down here.
Why not go
Then add
65
the
to
tip
67?
fee.
Well,
I mean,
It's-
the calculation, and I don't want to slow you down, but the calculation in tipping fee is, can we maintain the amount of money per ton? So it was 64 2 years ago to now, or 64, 65, to maintain the service
We could
where people
reduce
won't go
the
somewhere
transfer
else.
by that much.
So if it's just an additional dollar, the risk in losing people is minimal. If you try to raise it $10, then it's, people are gonna be like, screw this, go somewhere else. Excuse my language. But it may be somewhere where it's instead of $1, $2, you know, where people will be like, yeah, I can still handle this. And then we take one of those dollars and put it into the general fund, and the other dollar into the enterprise fund. Because again, fees I can handle, taxes become very challenging because,
right, and that's, and
Yeah.
part of the reason why I guess, you know, we
Okay.
had the discussion about the recordation
Yeah.
taxes because they don't hit everybody every year, right? If the intent is to try to make sure that people can still afford their food, then, you know, we do not want to touch property taxes, we do not want to touch income taxes. And knowing that we only have a recordation tax and knowing that ours is not as high as certain counties, especially when you combine that with transfer
Right.
taxes
right,
or fees. So if we make recordation $6.75,
Something like $5 million.
or 650, 675, something like that. And that is our current bottom line now?
Yes, with all the changes.
I just can't see going to 675. I mean,
I'd echo your opinion on that, because I think at that point, we're really pushing too much.
So you want to make it 650 and see how the numbers look there? It's not an easy conversation, and I, as everybody knows, I have such issues with tax increases of any kind, but I am, you know, wanting to fully fund the sheriff and to, you know, Commissioner Rossi, and to get that $1 million back to the school board like you want.
Oh, well.
It's without hitting people in their everyday expenses, hitting people in their property taxes, their income taxes.
let me,
Yes, I'm sorry.
No. I was going to say, make a suggestion, and that is not going to 675. Going to additional $2 in the tipping fees. So from 65 to 67, taking one of those dollars, putting it back into the general fund, keeping the $1 to allow for that position, not putting in the Hashua position.
So you think that recordation
And then
should be
Bringing
6?
recordation at no higher than 625, but I think even that's a
That's
significant
steep,
jump.
right?
But if we were to go to 625, let's see what it looks like,
Okay.
and then we'll, did
And-
you get all that, Deb? Okay, thanks.
Just a quick question. If we were going to include that additional position there, is there any real, and I know they're going to tell us otherwise, but is there any massive change to production of what they can do on that end, or is that just filling a position?
For the solid waste?
Yes.
They're under pressure now.
Okay.
So this is not.
That-
This would be releasing some of that.
That would be.
Oh, okay. No, I just want to confirm
yeah,
that. That's
That
fine.
would be a critical.
Okay.
And I understand the Rec and Parks want there, but just hard pressed. I mean, and they also do a lot with volunteers. We can do a volunteer promotion, program and, but I think putting $1 back in the tipping fee.
So what's that dollar coming from?
So the tipping fee,
Yep.
so 65, making it $67, keeping one of those dollars in the enterprise fund to fund that position, and then taking the other dollar
Yep.
and putting it in the general fund.
Yeah, I mean, that keeping in mind that, that what you'd in reality be doing is there's a transfer from general fund to the solid waste fund because
Right.
it does not make enough money to cover all the expenses of the solid waste operation. And so both dollars would go to the enterprise fund. You would just be reducing the amount of that
Save.
transfer by that amount.
Right,
It would save on the transfer.
Yeah.
right, okay.
So another question, and I'm not quite sure whether,
Let's see what this,
no, I apologize. I didn't know you guys were
have
talking.
you done all that, Deb?
Yeah, hold on. There it is. That's with 6.25 per 500 on the recordation. And the other expenditure changes that you had asked for.
So
Okay.
the Rec and Parks position at Hashua, is there grounds to make that a part-time rather than a full-time position? I mean, is that plausible? Is that
I think they need the full.
the full-time?
So so DOE's back, the sheriff's back. Right now, you show Rec and Parks.
In the landfill?
You need to show,
Oh, I apologize. You still have Rec and Parks in there?
right now, yeah.
Take out Rec and Parks. See what that looks like.
Well, can we look at the bottom line with it?
Yeah. no,
Yeah,
we
this
did.
is the bottom line.
What is it?
Negative 1.16.
So that's what I was saying, is take out the Rec and Parks just to see what it looks like.
Did you make any reduction to the general fund transfer to solid waste?
Wait, what is that? Minus 1 point?
Now it's negative 1,044,675.
Got it.
So then we had a discussion, I think we talked for a little while on Tuesday about the reinstituting of certain impact fees. I don't know whether or not that's something easily calculable or not, but again, it doesn't make sense that, we're going through all these issues with the school system and new houses are being built and they're not contributing toward the school system in which they're going to be participating.
But impact fees only go to capital projects.
Right, but, and the thing is that we have capital expenditures in the future that we're gonna have to contend with. I mean, what was it, somebody said a couple weeks ago, that if we followed the formula correctly, we have to either do additions or remodelings or buildings
Well,
or,
Yeah, what you're, I think, referring to is transferring teachers from the south to the north. It'll cause larger classroom sizes for those teachers, so they would need to expand the classrooms and facilities potentially, is a major concern, especially down in the south. But, yeah, I mean, it's gonna be tough.
So, going back to the tipping fee discussion, I feel like we're operating in a bit of a vacuum right now. Do we need to hear from DPW on that particular dollar figure and raising the tipping fee by that much? I mean, have they conducted a market study of sorts to let us know what that impact's gonna be? Because obviously it's gonna hit residents. You know, usually I use that landfill, so I'm not hauling a ton of stuff there, but it's gonna go up by $1 or so, perhaps. But it's the commercial folks that we have to worry about.
Yeah, there's a small number that we need to worry about. This is not a large study. And Cliff is saying that he's comfortable $1 would not impact us. Now, the impact on the payer is a different story.
Yeah.
Well,
But-
if that's what he's saying, then, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Winnow.
If I may, if the board was interested in increasing it by $2, I definitely would want to hear from solid waste folks,
Right.
because that could have a significant
Yes,
impact.
that's,
Yeah,
And thank you, because that would be my concern. Now, I'll give Cliff credit. I mean, he knows what he's talking about
does.
when it comes to the landfill, so. if
Was
he's-
it 65?
yeah.
It's currently 65.
So $2 is 3% increase, which
So
to the,
he's saying he's comfortable with one.
He's
know.
comfortable
we're
with
we're
one.
checking.
Okay.
He's okay with
All right.
2.
Yeah.
I don't know how much room he was seeing
Right.
clearly enough to say 1's
Right.
okay.
No, it's a good point. I mean, we're not the experts in tipping fees.
So
I mean,
I'm not.
no.
$1 is $95,000, right? So that would be, so if you are interested in sort of reducing the amount that we transfer from the general fund to solid waste by $1's worth of tipping fee, it would only change that $95,000. Just,
And Cliff is also saying that he believes he could go $2 on C and D waste. C and D,
Demolition.
construction and demolition.
That's the commercial guys.
So here in row 114, if you did both actions, the $2 increase in C and D and the $1 increase in MSW, you would have $145,000 of additional revenue based on the tonnage that are projected. The cost of, so you can see how much the cost of the LEO, the position, landfill equipment operator, you could fund that and still have a reduction in your solid waste transfer of about 67,000.
Okay.
Okay, we have an answer from Cliff. Very comfortable with $1 on MSW and $2 on C and D, iffy on $2 MSW.
Okay. So that goes back down to $1. I mean, we gotta associate risk, with what decisions we're making. So bring it back down to that $1.
Do they want to do this?
So Ted, where are we gonna get $1 million from?
I don't have a good answer for that.
You didn't play Powerball.
and it's gotta be ongoing, it's not just,
So,
Right.
so we're,
So where are we at now, bottom line wise?
yeah, we,
Like
you can go back to the bottom.
1.4,
Okay.
1.5.
So the school board asked for $13.4 million. And up to a few minutes ago, we were providing them with 92.5% of what they asked for. We're trying to meet everybody's salary requests that are gonna that never go away. You can multiply everything by 5, 10, whatever, you know, it creates, it affects the bottom line out to FY '29. You know, public works projects aren't getting any cheaper. So we've got to look at one of those three things if we want to do what we want to do. I think, so what are we going to, instead of
Yeah.
adding money, we need to be looking at taking money away. I think we had the, across the board, salary increases at 4.5 when we left on Tuesday. But again, these things never go away cost-wise.
So,
So if you were willing to take 500 out of Board of Ed and 500 out of the sheriff, we'd about be done. And I don't,
so, I don't mean to cut you off, because I understand what you're saying. I just want to be clear, they're asking for 6.7
Yep.
in addition to what we have
yep,
in the budget.
and
And
the
they're,
mindset is, which Ted said a
Yeah.
couple of times, we're not cutting anything.
Right.
We're adding 6.2, and we're adding 1.5.
no,
1.46,
1.3,
whatever.
yeah.
And, you know, it's, some got 0 more that they asked for, and very few, if any, got 100%, but it's tough. And what's recordation in here now?
6.25, I think.
Yeah,
is-
I think
But we haven't voted on anything.
No,
It's
6.25.
Yeah,
okay.
but we haven't-
voted on 6.
we voted on 6. We haven't voted on 6.25. And we definitely didn't vote on 6.75.
I think the recordation tax, I have a settlement in April and one in May, and the realtor doing it, the title company's probably gonna call me, has said, I don't see this as significant.
Okay.
And what I can see, like I think I said it in here the other day, a $400,000 house, you're adding $800. So if we add 1,200, they may come back and say, well, we're not giving you 400, we'll give you 399. I think it's all gonna be negotiated in that. I may be naive, but I don't see somebody not buying a house they want because of the
Right,
recordation
right.
tax. And particularly when we don't have a transfer tax. It's,
Yeah, I agree.
easy for me to say because I'm selling. I was surprised that it wasn't more when I
Yeah.
looked at the title sheets.
No, I
So
agree with you. What if we did that? What if we looked at the 6.25 and the 500,000?
I think this is up there now, right?
No.
The 6 point-
6.25's in it now.
Yeah, but
Yes.
changing the 6.7 to 6.2, and then whatever additional we gave to the sheriff, cutting that in half.
So you mean funding the sheriff at 75% instead of?
Correct.
Okay.
Right now. Where are I see the nonprofits within citizen services. Where are the other nonprofits in
It's-
here?
That's the email Deb sent earlier
That's the email.
today, mostly in economic development
Oh,
and one
I
in
thought
rec.
that-
There's one in Rec and Parks.
This,
No, well, let's see, that might be it. Yeah, I think it's it. So,
oh, I see.
so quick question, looking at economic development. So we're giving, let me see here, other contributions, it shows 31,000 to Heart of the Civil War. Is there a specific minimum, or is there tiers that we're giving, or we just chose to give 31,000? I know the year before it was 35, I'm just trying to make sense of that.
I don't know. And the person
We'll
that
get
should
back to
know.
you.
Okay, no, take your time. I'm asking some abstract questions right now, so it's fine. The other one, to follow up on that, would be the Greater Baltimore Economic Alliance. Clearly, that's been 20,000 a year according to this since FY '20. I'm just curious if, same situation, is there a reason is it's 20, or is that our choice, or are there tiers of giving that we're choosing to participate in?
Part of the Civil War and the Baltimore Economic Alliance are the 31 and 20, are those set numbers that if we're going to be in, we have to give them?
I'd have to check, I'd have to check with them, I'm not sure.
I think, I don't know about the one, but I think the Economic Alliance Greater Baltimore, which is now the GBC,
Mhm.
they merged, I think that's a set amount of 20,000.
Just out of curiosity, if we can find out either way.
Finding out.
The SBDC is paying for, what's his name, Darren
Yes.
downstairs.
Yes, correct.
Chamber, CTC, Magic.
Here, I'll just throw an idea out. I don't know what we're going to find out on the Heart of the Civil War and the Economic Alliance.
Oh, there it is.
So if we took Economic Alliance, if we can, if we cut that to 10, let's say we cut that in half. And let's say Heart of the Civil War, we just make that 15,000.
What is the Heart of the Civil War?
It's a historic-based group that's Maryland and a variety of other jurisdictions.
I mean, how do we participate?
Did he say
in it?
cut by
Do you
60?
know? I have no
I know, and I can't honestly answer that today.
I have no idea.
So if we pull those, so the 10 and then the 15, and then if we come down to Magic, Tech Council, and Chamber of Commerce, if we pull the 10,000 from the Chamber, the 7,500 from the Tech Council, and the 7,500 from Magic, that would give us, what, $50,000? Oh, you've got the one at 16, I'm at 15.
No, we're cutting it by 16 because it was
Okay.
31, right? That's what you
That's
wanted.
fine, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
Just
so
cut it
we
in.
would free up 50.
No, I got you. No, we're good.
Roberta, do you know who's involved with Heart of the Civil War?
Yes, tourism and planning. They're very active. We get grants from them. Our historic corridor entities within that corridor can receive grants, and so I don't know. Again, I'm not familiar with why these dollar amounts are what they are.
Yeah, that was my only question, is why there's dollar
They're
amounts.
headquartered in Frederick. I'm looking at it. I,
Yep.
for some reason, haven't
The,
noticed it.
the executive director's been before, the boards before, but doesn't come all that often. The Tech Council and Magic, you know, I don't think there are any questions about, those are just dollars
Correct.
to help them out.
I'm
We
not-
don't have any expectations. I'm
No.
not sure about the chamber.
Chamber is just a flat amount, because we have the membership, and then the county pays for various events and so forth we go to. That's just an additional 10,000 to them, from what I learned
not-
from economic development this week, so.
It's not our membership.
No, that is not our membership. That's 10,000 above and
It's a
beyond.
Sponsorship,
Gotcha.
probably.
I was told it was just an actual grant we give to them as additional
I
funding.
bet you it puts our name on the banner.
job competition
That's
that the
why.
chamber puts on,
The
Carol Biz Challenge.
Carol Biz
It
Challenge.
helps sponsor the Carol Biz
Yeah,
Challenge.
that's what I thought.
That's what we've been told. The 10,000 to the chamber.
Right.
So unless I'm missing something here, and please, somebody correct me if there's something that I am missing.
You're missing.
If, if Heart of the Civil War Heritage Area, and I was just looking at their website, talks about grants and funds to people, right? Why are we giving them money instead of getting money from them?
Well, we actually do. Various entities, if I remember correctly, and don't quote me on this, but I believe examples would be like the Historical Society, the Farm Museum, organizations like that can and do apply for grants from them.
So we fund them to fund other people, and we also fund other people.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
no, I'll be honest. This 51 grand is way more important to these individual groups than it is to us.
Well, I'm not gonna,
I have a soft heart for the nonprofits, and listening to what we heard this morning, I don't know what this fixes for us.
Well, those in citizen services, we're not touching. That's not what he's addressing.
no, I'm not interested in that at all.
Yeah.
Um,
I
Because
understand.
everyone that you're talking about, I 100% don't want to touch.
I agree, but these, I'm not sure.
I guess the question is, and I don't have all the numbers in front of me today, they're upstairs.
Yeah.
But if I sit down and I show you some of these numbers versus some other comparisons, you might change your opinion. And that's not taking away from any of these. I'm just looking at, and to your point on Tuesday, you said, well, why can't they fundraise?
Yep.
So,
Oh, I agree.
to your own argument, I'm looking at how do we pull money from X for Y if we're looking at safety and education, be it 50,000 or 500,000.
Oh, I understand. I just,
Yeah.
No, I understand what you mean, Commissioner Carley. For me also, I every single one of those numbers I look at, I just, you multiply it exponentially because it never goes away if we don't make any change.
Correct.
So that 25,000 can quickly become $100,000 before this board ends.
That is not uncommon. I mean, I sponsored lots of nonprofits from economic development in Anne Arundel, and it just kept going up. They kept
Oh,
coming
yeah.
back to me and said, can you give me 10 more thousand?
oh, yeah.
I'm like,
Yep, no,
really?
I agree.
So,
It's tough all over.
I get you.
Just looking quickly at their website and FY '23 award winners of some of their funding, the Homestead, Union Mills got $4.6 thousand, the Farm Museum got $1.8 thousand, UN?
Union Mills.
Union Mills, again. Oh, in '21, got 4. Historical Society got 2.3. So, yeah, it funds various things. These are what they call their mini grants, so.
So you were saying it was 2,300? You said 2.3. I was making sure I heard you say.
2,300.
Okay, I'm just-
These were all thousands.
Gotcha. Just want to make sure for
Yes,
clarification. I was
thank
like,
you,
wait a
yes.
minute.
I'm sorry, Ms. Wyndham, that was Heart of the Civil War?
That's, yeah. So they give out grants to historic-related organizations and properties and things that meet their criteria. And that are in their funding area. They have a very specific, very outlined area that includes sort of the western, like,
So-
the western half of
Yeah.
Carroll, most of Frederick, and some of Washington County, if I recall correctly. Yes.
One more time, because I know you all go in there. Historical Society, Carroll County,
Yes,
is a nonprofit.
correct.
We're giving them 80,000 a year.
Is it 80 or 60? I think it goes to 60 this year, if I read that correctly. I was looking at that myself. It is 60, correct? It's 60, and then they were asking for 20,000. They're asking for 20,000 for the next 3 years for that other project, which
Who knows? Yeah, go ahead.
I have mixed emotions on that. I'm just going to be blunt. I had mixed emotions when they presented. That's nothing against or for them either way. And to your point, on Tuesday, and I hate to keep bringing that up,
I'm opposed to that.
no, I understand that.
Sure.
I think the question, though, and I think it's a good question, was it was either, with all respect, it was either the previous board, it was either last year or the year before, funded them for repairs on their building. And that was a sizable amount of money, if I do recall. And, some of these organizations, my point is, we go back to 1999 and we can start adding these totals up, and it's $1.7 million for X organization, or it's whatever for
Yeah.
Y. And I think the challenge becomes that I've always assumed this was going to happen one day. I didn't think Blueprint was going to be the monster in the closet. That 1.7, yes, it's over X number of years, but that's still money that we could be using for safety and security and education versus some other things. Now, we would have the opportunity maybe to work with some of these groups and try to see if they can steer the ship a little differently, shall we say, and they could then do more on their own versus coming to us for whether it's 20,000 or 80,000 or anything else. Obviously, they all fit a piece of the community, and I think they have importance. I think the question is, to your point, Commissioner Rothstein, when we're looking at security, safety, and education, how do they fit in, and are they on the top end of the priority, or are they farther down? It's not that they're not important, and I realize some of these numbers are very low, but it's an ongoing number.
I agree, and, you know, Union Mills, we provide 20,000. Union Mills is one of the highlights of Carroll County, along with the Farm Museum and other locations that people attend. So, you know, it's a kind of, I don't want to say blunt, but it's obvious. Historical Society, Carroll County, giving them 80,000 to now 60,000, you're right, that's a lot of money ongoing. And I appreciate the things they do, because I've been over there and I've participated, but that's a lot of money. And
But Union Mills, we
I'm-
also pave and mow.
Thank you.
I know.
And do maintenance.
Oh,
Yeah,
I-
so it's
I-
far
I
above the
agree.
100, or it's far above the 20,000 when
Yeah.
we start adding all that in. I think, at least from my perspective, and I don't know, I haven't really discussed this with any of you, and I don't have a definitive thought here. It's why I wanted to have today and then the weekend to kind of continue some thoughts, plus we're meeting with them today. You know, there's two options. We can continue to fund the way we do. Actually, there's three options. We could cut them all based on whatever reasons, or we could potentially look at some of them and make some adjustments this year and let them know that, hey, this may be this year, but next year's not going to be this, nor is the year after, because we have other priorities that are of, you know, mass significance that we need to focus on.
so my recommendation is that we take a hard look at them now and make a significant adjustment now. They can have the conversation, like everybody else is watching, to build their argument. And if it, you know, is strong enough to bring back, then we'll bring it back. But, you know, we shouldn't leave here today without trying to get as close to that zero as we can. And if I'm looking at all of these other nonprofits and citizen services for all the work they're doing, I'm trying to equate them, I'm having a really tough time doing that. So,
And I understand that, but the 51 ongoing
yeah,
doesn't fund half of a position.
51, what?
The money we had just totaled up from the other, and I'm not suggesting it would.
And I think, I don't want to speak for Ted, but he rounded to 0 today, and it was a larger figure than 51. I think if we get the budget within 51, he's going to be very happy.
Yeah, for 24, if we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars, we will
Yes.
figure out
Yeah,
something.
I just don't think this is a discussion worth an hour time
Well-
when we're in the middle of the budget.
I
Well, I'm
think,
not- go ahead.
but I think, you know, the Historical Society, you know, 60,000, why not bring them down to 20,000
Oh, I
ongoing?
understand.
Well, I think the other question, though, and like I said, I have some notes upstairs, and we can all look at it over the next couple of days, but irregardless of whether it's the Historical Society or any of these other groups, I think the real question is, what's their bottom line? Because to your point, Commissioner Kyler, you said, well, we'll let them fundraise. So I think the real question is, let's not look at what they're asking for, and let's not look at who they are. Let's pull up their 990s and go, what were your revenues last year? What were your expenses? What was your payment to your employees? How much assets do you have? Because the reality is, you know, 20,000, 10,000, whatever, is it a big deal to them? It may be a drop in the bucket, and I realize it's a drop in our bucket, but I think it has a little more significance to us getting the taxpayers and the teachers and everyone else to where they probably are going to be more comfortable moving now and forward versus just keeping it status quo, because I think status quo is what kind of has got us in trouble over the last 30 years.
It hasn't been status quo. It's been adjusted, some down and some up, and I assume with reason.
Well, part of the equation to everything you just said, which I do agree with, a large part of the equation is what is their impact to Carroll Countyans?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And, you know, if they are building their operational nest egg larger than some others, and they are moving money the way they see fit, because not every executive director gets paid the same as every other
Absolutely.
executive director. The bottom line is, what is their impact to Carroll Countyans? And that's why this heart of the Civil War, which I fully respect, although I may not know as much about them as I probably should, or Historical Society of Carroll County, there's an impact, but could they do
Yeah, Denise
same
said
amount
that
of
she thinks we
impact
do have input
with
on those amounts. as
a
far as what we're paying
significant
to
less
them.
amount of money?
And it's very possible. I think the question, and I don't disagree with you, I think the question would be, given the longevity of those amounts that we've been giving to some of these organizations, do we have that frank conversation with them this year? Fund them, whether it be 100% of what the current number may be or slightly less, and then make significant adjustments, as we've all talked about, as soon as this budget's over, the next one starts. So I think the thing is, I don't want to throw the baby bird out of the nest and let it crash. We want all of these organizations to be successful.
Yes.
But I think the reality is, whether it be this or whether it be something else with larger numbers, I think we have to ask the question. It's not our money. It's people's
have-
money. And when we have people not to beat a dead horse, but you said a couple people at your town hall, Commissioner Kyler, that were like, well, why are you guys funding X?
Yeah.
Now, granted, that's that person's opinion, and
Yep.
we get emails all the time about that. But I think if we want to start looking at really making change, which we have to, be it, blueprint and the rest of it, let's look at moving forward and adjusting these numbers, be it starting.
That's, we need to look at it. I mean, again, my humble opinion, 20% of this is the Carroll Business Challenge. That does a lot for Carroll County. That fills that building. I missed it this year, and I regretted missing it.
I was there.
So I would not cut that.
Here we have a little bit more information for you, and then maybe I can make a suggestion on this. The heart of the
Civil War.
or the Civil War, and what was the other, the Business Council. We believe that we do have discretion on how much we fund there. And on the big picture for this, just recognizing where we are in the process, I'm going to suggest we do one of two things. Either take some votes on what are we willing to do right now and say, maybe we'll discuss this more in the future, or say, we're not going to act this year, but we want to talk about this more. We still have some
Okay.
big questions to deal with.
Okay.
No, and I don't disagree with you. I think realistically, if everybody be okay with this, what I'd like to do is put a pin in this, since we've obviously got bigger issues, and since Ted mentioned earlier, we're going to have to clean up some issues, let's talk about this briefly on Tuesday. Everybody come in with whatever decisions they want to talk on these topics, and hit this in a brief period of
I
time.
guess my question would be, this doesn't affect the budget, and we're here to talk about budget. When do we spend that money? In other words, just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we have to spend it.
With these agencies or just in general?
These, I think you mean these? Yeah, that's a good question. When does that money actually
Get executed.
go out?
Okay, there are different payment schedules for different organizations, but with the things we're talking about here, my guess is probably most or all of them get their money July 1st
Right.
or close to
Fiscal
that.
year.
So whether we leave it in the budget today or not, we have time to talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Not final budget.
You, even putting it in the budget is not a commitment to spend it. You could
Right.
still
Exactly.
change your mind, with a few exceptions. If you commit to the school system, then
Okay.
you're committed. But if you commit to the heart of the Civil War, you could change your mind on June 31st, other 31 days. Okay, and the other thing we still need to go back to is
30 days.
solid waste. We talked about some things, but we need to know, are we increasing the tipping fee $1? Are we increasing C&D $2? And are you adding the position or not?
Well, and there's, okay, so there's other questions that you need answers, that we've made adjustments.
Yep.
So we can start with what you just said. Because there were that we put into this already. So, the recommended tipping fees changes, and I really do appreciate Cliff, and you engaging with Cliff and getting that information. Along with adding that position. Are we in agreement to that?
What was the amount again?
It was $1, $2, and then the position.
$1 for municipal solid waste, $2 for construction and debris.
And add that position.
And then add,
Position
and
was
then
90-something, right?
add that position, which I thought was
77.
79 something.
77, okay.
Yeah,
So, I'll
Okay.
make a motion, we do those three things
okay.
in solid waste.
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second. Any,
Aye.
aye.
They want the remainder.
I'm sorry, Mike,
Go to-
you good?
I'm gonna say no, but that's okay.
Okay,
I just
just,
feel like we're taking one step forward and two steps
Yeah.
back here with
No,
some
I-
of these.
I
But
got you.
But I can appreciate
Okay.
the vote.
and that's, honestly, just, it's important for us, because the last couple of years of my experience, I didn't have this, was the collaboration that we're having to have these conversations on why we're doing, not the, well, I just said no. I'm like, well, why? Give me a feel so we can move.
I've lost a few, so, I know what it's like.
But,
I hear you, Mike.
no,
I hear you,
so,
brother.
but it's good to understand
Okay.
why, and we can go, okay, so we talked about the Board of Education. Instead of going into $1 million, going to $500,000, so 6.2. And on Tuesday, I'm still gonna try and fight for that other 500, just to let you know. We'll figure that out. Okay, so that's my motion to adding the 500.
What's the bottom line now?
I believe this also reflects recordation at 6.25.
Right, we'll get to that.
Okay.
So, right now, you're saying
6 point,
add 6.2 to Board of Ed.
correct. That's my motion. Is there a second on that?
I'm sorry, you mean the 500,000?
Yeah, but it'll be a total of 6.2.
Okay,
Yeah.
right, all right.
I second it.
Okay,
Let them beat me up last night, they might as well beat me up again.
I'm still gonna try and figure out, there's numbers in
It's
this
tough.
book. There's numbers in this book that we can peel out, and I'm gonna show you. But, okay, going to 5.7 to 6.2. I got a motion, I got a second. Any discussion on this?
Just one quick question. I thought
Sure.
we were going to ask them to contribute something from their reserve, or did we decide that was,
They can't use their
Yeah,
reserve
that's-
for any of this.
okay.
That's
It's all
capital.
ongoing money.
That's all, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought we had
And
added,
I even asked,
Yeah.
can we do like we did with AgPres and do some one-time money? And they
Right.
said that doesn't, we're into paid positions and negotiation for salaries, so it's all ongoing.
Gotcha, okay.
Because I thought that would be an easy way to accommodate them, you know?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Gary?
I thought we had already added back some into the BOE budget when we started here this afternoon.
We didn't make a decision on it, so I added all of it back, but we didn't make a decision. Now I'm bringing it back
Okay.
to 6.2.
Okay, so we had
Okay.
added
Had
it
a million,
$1 million back in. That's,
and then now it's 500,000.
Now it's 500.
Instead
so
of a
I-
million.
Yeah, I brought it
in.
back down to 500,
okay, so I'll.
with the intent to argue more on Tuesday about it. But-
Yeah, we're not done.
So, okay, so I have a motion, I have a second, in adding 500 to make it clearly, to make it 6.2. Okay, is there any further discussion on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mike?
So,
No, hold on,
So
Yeah,
we
bear
had-
with me.
apologize.
we had 5.7.
Correct.
We
And
started today.
that's
and now we got
correct.
some-
And he
Now we-
wanted to
and
add
now
a
we got-
million.
I understand.
Changed it to
Yeah.
500.
That's going to be a no for me. I just don't
Okay.
think we're going to
Nope.
get where we need to be unless we're taking a look
Yep.
at the rate of salary increases and the BOE budget. I
Right.
think we'll be doing this for a while, but again, we're
And
funding
if-
92.5% of what they asked for, and we still have a long way to go next year.
Yes.
So either way, we're going to do everything we can to do the right thing.
Right.
So-
The intent,
So your no isn't to take out money, you're thinking we should take out more.
Well, I think we
Well-
started, I think at one point we were at 1.5
Yeah,
out
we
of
went-
there, and
yep,
that seemed
yep.
to work well for us on the bottom line.
and
So, yeah, we're
Yeah.
definitely going in a direction that I,
are opposite.
opposite. So.
And again, clear, it's not about taking out money.
Yep, yep.
It's about lessening the amount we're putting
Well,
in.
but I see
Excellent.
what
Thank-
he's
thank
saying.
you.
We
You're right.
started 6.7.
Right.
I made it 5.7. You made it 6.2. No, you made it 5.2.
Correct.
We took that away, and yeah, it's changed
So
like
now-
5 or 6
Okay.
times.
But-
it's
but
back,
again,
and that's why I
yeah.
said, it's back to 6.
And the other part, and we're gonna continue on, the other part about this is not trying to browbeat anybody or
Yeah.
beat somebody down to just a submission. If you're not comfortable, just say it, and we'll keep moving. So, the next one was, the sheriff. At first, it was to fully fund his request. And I'm still gonna try and get that on Tuesday, but in order to move forward to provide, so to fully fund his request is $1.695 million. And not doing that, making it 75% of that, whatever that is. Okay. So that's my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second. Any further discussion on this?
So you're just gaming out
Yeah.
the numbers right now. Tuesday, you intend to,
Well, my intent is to go up, but I'll tell you right now, my intent is to really dig into our operational dollars and say, what if we took X off of this line item, which we can do. This is our recommended budget for operational dollars. It's not our budget that we will adhere to. It is the best that the team has provided us, along with our entire team. But there are dollars here that we could take risk on. Within rec and culture summary. Now, I don't want to tag anybody because I don't want to get anybody all
What you're saying is.
flipped out.
You're hoping Tuesday to take enough out to maybe add some of this back.
Absolutely,
But for now-
hope is not a course of action.
Okay, I'm going to argue against that
That's
course,
okay.
of that course of action. If there are places where you're thinking about taking money out, I don't think we should wait till Tuesday. I think we should be talking about now.
No, okay, and we can do that. We can do that today, and I'm prepared to do that as well, so.
Okay, because
Okay.
there will undoubtedly be things that you're going to say, well, let's cut
Okay.
this, and then we're going to say,
Okay.
but you don't
I'm-
understand that that means this.
I'm happy to do that as well, so.
But I think so where are we at now?
So a motion and a second has been made to
Sheriff at
add-
75%.
the sheriff's requirement or request of salary increases to 75%. Is there further discussion on this?
and again, you
I
intend to,
apologize. Say again?
I'm sorry, you intend to go with the full, you intend to talk about the full amounts next
My
time?
argument will be, yes.
Maybe.
Because that's kind of where I'm falling on this too. So
That-
I'm I'm not opposed to looking at the numbers, so I.
No,
but I'm-
that's my intent,
Okay.
but we got to get there.
Right, right.
You know, just, okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we got 5. Let's look at the recordation.
What's the bottom line right now?
Okay. So that includes the recordation. We have all agreed to 6.
6.
6.
We have agreed to 6. What you see in front of us.
625 is in here, right?
I know, that's what I'm saying, is what you see in front of us is 625. So we either have to agree to the 625, not the 6.75, but the 625, or go back down to 6. So,
Before you make a motion,
not necessarily me,
okay, so from 68, it was 330, 95, it was 350, 03, it was 5.
yep,
So it's been 20 years since it changed.
recordation, correct. And it's been about 10, 12 years for the others, but for recordation, that's correct.
Yep.
So, okay. Is there a motion to go from 6 to 6.25?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on this? This is difficult.
I'm a no vote right now on this. I just think this is, I think we're going back to this, I think we've been back to this, this well a few times, and I'm just not ready to go back to it again right now without taking a harder look at some of these expenditures. And that's, again, salary increases. Looks like we're funding the school system, almost every dollar that they wanted. I understand that, but
Okay.
have to slow the growth
Okay.
a little bit.
Definitely not cutting you off, just looking, any further discussion on this? I have a motion, I have a second. Understand, if something doesn't go through Robert's rules, those that make the motion cannot bring back the motion. Okay. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Against?
Aye.
No. Okay, so that failed. 2-3. If you can, bring it back down to 6. Rec and Parks, the sports complex, specifically, what is that?
What is the sports complex?
Yeah, in the front.
It's a facility on 97. There are a lot of ball fields there for both soccer, lacrosse, baseball.
John
Oh.
Owings Park, or
Yeah.
Okay.
which book you in and what page?
Oh, I apologize. I'm in the recommended
Okay.
operating budget, and I'm on page 35 right now. And there are services that have all been increased, well, sports complex by 17%, but the others by 20% up to 37%.
Okay, most of the change you're looking at is due to the big salary
Is
changes we
salaries.
made.
Okay, is that what it is?
The big expenditures there are people. I mean, there's other stuff.
Yeah,
But you're going to look at a lot of budgets where you're going to see what look like unusual increases, and it's because we made that very unusual change.
are there then, can you share with me areas that it's other than those salary increases, or no? Within the operating budget?
Places where you have big expenditures other than salaries would be
Yeah.
things like roads and facilities and fleet. There might be some others where there's a little bit more than others. But just, as you're trying to go here, just want to make sure the board understands the process that gets us to this point. All of them have worked with these agencies on these budgets, line by line, expenditure by expenditure. And they're doing that in context of the money that we think is going to be available. So that whole process is driven by how do we continue to provide the same level of service or try to and stay within the budget. So looking for places to say, well, there's an easy cut to make, there aren't going to be any. If we want to make expenditure reductions, we have to make choices to reduce services or, and this, I would argue that this is a reduction of service, but sometimes people look at it a little differently, delay doing things. But anything we're going to delay, I'm going to argue is just creating a problem for us later. We can buy fewer vehicles, but that doesn't mean the vehicles we're saying that need to be replaced need to be replaced. We can do fewer road miles, but those roads aren't going away.
Right.
So if we're going to go down this path, I just think you should be very consciously thinking about where am I willing to advocate for a lower level of service? And then we can tell you what dollars could go away with that.
Right.
Or we
The-
can try.
The interfund transfers, we don't have flexibility, or do we, when we're talking about
Well-
interfund transfers?
In some cases, well, probably in all cases, but, an interfund transfer, one would be where we have the dedicated school construction money. If we're going to use it to pay debt service, there's money transferred from the capital fund into the general fund. If we're going to use cash on a capital project, there's going to be a transfer from the general fund to the capital fund. So the transfers are all things like that. Now, you can choose not to put cash on a capital project. If you don't put the cash on, then there's no transfer. But, think of the transfers are not really spending decisions. They're the mechanics to put the money where it needs to be.
But the transfer to capital funds is large. It's like $46 million.
Yes, that's because we're putting a lot of cash onto projects. You remember back earlier in this process, we talked about how much planned bonds we eliminated to take the debt service off the bottom line. You don't have to do that. You can reverse that. But every $1 million that we take out of a cash for a project is then going to create increased debt choice we want to make.
It would make this look worse.
If you reduce cash on a project, unless we're going to get rid of the project, then we're going to take on debt instead.
Okay.
So is the cash out of this budget?
If we reduce how much cash is going to the capital budget, that would not show up in the operating budget at all, and you would have more money
Just
sitting
the
on the
bond,
sidelines.
just the cost of the bond would show up.
Yes,
So it would make the bottom line worse.
yes.
So with the 895,000 we have now, if we were to remove the 500 that we just added back for the school board, and then took another 500,000 out of PFAS, that would leave us with 2.5 of the original 5 that we were considering. That still puts us above the lower end of the average for PFAS remediation that I looked up the other day. And that would give us a net positive balance of somewhere around $100,000.
You know, in the PFAS remediation, I wouldn't fall in love with those numbers and taking an average of them. You know, we're taking a shot at
Right.
something where we don't even know what the project is yet. And, you know, I'll continue to say, you can put whatever number you want in there, but at some point, we're going to be left to fund whatever it is.
Exactly.
And that's fair. That's fair. But if we're talking about, you know, going back to what we said a few minutes ago about major ways that we take steps forward,
Yeah, and just on, you know, that and what Commissioner Rothstein was saying earlier, just want to go back to this idea. As we brought to the recommended budget to you, we consciously recommended taking a lot of one-time money we had, putting it into one-time projects so that it wasn't
Right.
building an ongoing commitment.
Right.
And it was also reducing an ongoing commitment by reducing our debt service. So it was a fairly significant change.
Do we have any more of that available
One-time money?
to do exactly what you just said?
I don't think so, because Tuesday we had about, I think we put 9 or 8 million into the garage and 8 million into future for bonds for the,
Right.
So here's what you have left from 22, $500,000. Now, there's still, what's 23,
24 million.
a projected 24.
Right.
And we've tried to steer you away from
Right.
using that money in this budget. But, I mean, it is in your hands to choose to do that.
Because the 24 million is not a solid number.
It's not a known number, and if you use it now, in the next budget process, you don't have that to even consider anymore because it's already gone.
But if we were to use some of it, it could get us to where we want to go.
Yes, you could
Like-
use
like-
some,
Like, unfortunately, using this salami slicing type approach, if we took 4 million, like made that 20 million, you know, we're still safe saying 20 million from that 4 million. And, you know, so it'd be 4.5 million because we're taking from 22 as well. What would that then look like to our bottom line?
4.5?
okay, now, I don't know, I'm not sure what Deb's going to try and do here, but just keep in mind that that's not an easy answer because part of it is tied to what projects and what the timing of those projects is going to be. So we could put cash on a project in 29, and it will have no impact to the bottom line you're looking at because the debt service is going to be in 30 and 31.
Right.
So what did you do?
Right now, I only put the surplus revenue in of 4.5 million. So are you saying 4.5 million and reduce bonds?
Yes.
I'm not sure.
Okay, so
Did
you-
he say that? Did he
I
say?
didn't say that, but
You didn't say it, but I assumed that that was
but
your...
isn't that what I would want to do?
Yes,
I mean,
that's what I was
yeah.
trying to explain. So, yeah, you could just go to the parking garage, put additional cash on there, and that, not that that's the only option, but that's
Right.
at least one we
But
can
that-
easily look at.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, well, it would just be in half, right? 4.5 million, this debt service, I could reduce by half. And that would be the 4.5 million, because we were bonding 9 million.
Right.
So this would be
And that just by itself would change the bottom line?
let me think. How would I use this surplus use?
Yeah.
That would be 4,500. It won't change the bottom line because we're going to be putting cash on parking garage.
Okay, yeah, so if you wanted to help 24, it's not going to get there.
No.
If you wanted to change 24, we'd have to find a project or projects where we actually expect to spend money, not only spend money, but issue bonds in 24.
This debt service doesn't start this year,
Right.
so it doesn't help this year.
And with many of our projects, with most of our projects, we spend money before we even issue the bonds. You know, we figure out that, you know, we've spent this $5 million, Now we issue, and this probably already happened, I don't know if you remember or not, but the comptroller will come to you every year to get you to approve a resolution to reimburse yourself. What that is saying is, we're going to spend money knowing that we're going to issue debt later, and this is the authority I need to be able to go do that when it happens.
Here's what I could do. Oh, I still needed to have that hashed. No, wait a second. Yeah, this would be a reduction.
What's that?
I'm talking to myself, actually.
Don't interrupt her.
Exactly.
That way she gets all the right answers, right?
Yeah.
So you're just taking a fictitious project
Yeah,
that's
like if we were to reduce.
$4.5 million.
Yeah, if we were to reduce $4.5 million from the FY '24 planned bond sales, let's say we put it on roads, the road overlays, instead of bonding
Okay,
it.
okay.
Because we have a certain amount of bonds we plan to sell in
Yep.
'24. So unidentified.
And her talking about
FY
bonds on
24
roads
project.
Bond,
is a good example to think about how some of this plays out sometimes. With roads, we're doing this every year. It's very predictable.
Right.
You you do something like state's attorney headquarters, we might have a plan for when it's going to happen, but it doesn't always come off
Right.
in the same way. So it's not unusual for us to change our projections.
those are just estimates. These last two ones are estimates. So what would that do? Wait a second, let me think about this.
She's still talking to herself.
I am. That's because it's not capturing everything. Oops, circular reference. Oh, because it has to be 80.
I'm glad she does it. I don't think I could pull this off the way she does here.
Don't worry, I don't think you could either.
Makes sense. Is this capturing it up here?
That's why you have a team.
Why is that not? Should not have had an impact.
It shouldn't be so high, yeah.
Yeah.
It should have really no effect, except for the 112,000, right?
The surplus use is cash, so it should be in and out and shouldn't change the total.
There we go. Yeah, the formula wasn't picking up the last two
That
rows.
makes sense.
Okay.
That it would still be slightly under 800,000.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Now, another nuance of this, when you're trying to look at how does reducing bonds affect your debt service, is the first year is debt service only. I think it's just a half-year payment. So another one of these, the further you try and get into it, the more complicated it gets.
But it's,
Well, if we were done right now, we're still too far off for
We could plug it.
you guys to clean it up, and
so,
we need to get closer.
Yes, once we know your decisions, then we can start making sure that it all actually works.
Yes,
and
yes.
and is real. And the session on Tuesday was set up as a backup in case we needed it. And that is really kind of the last day where it is realistic for them to all do the things they need to do to get this released at the time it has to be.
okay, so in doing this, the risk in doing this is taking 4 million away from potentially 24 million, having less for next year.
Yeah, and the risk associated with it not coming in, I think, is fairly small. and I don't know if you call it risk or not, but at least an
Yeah.
impact to you is you have less flexibility next
Right.
time around.
Not having 24, but having only 20, if those were the numbers, okay. So, with that said, the motion then would be to transfer the 4 million from FY '23 and 500,000 from FY '22 into debt service starting in FY '24.
Well, it wouldn't be into debt service. It would be going as funding on a capital project.
That then impacts the debt service.
Yes, it
That would
be a
impact, okay,
reduction.
so, okay,
It becomes debt service that never happens.
okay, on to capital projects. That would be it, okay. Does everybody understand what this is doing?
Yeah, I think, didn't we also briefly touch on this the other day, too? About,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at least, it is a step with relatively low risk.
I mean, and I'll be honest, I do have concerns about, and again, I know we're expecting that it's going to be a sizable amount that we're going to have at the end of the current fiscal year, but I'm just not comfortable with leveraging what we aren't 100% certain we've got to try to help balance future years.
But I think it's relatively small compared to the 24 million. I mean, if I was to say, let's take 20 million out of the 24, then it'd be a different story. But taking 4 million out of 24,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
conceptually, Commissioner Bigliotti, I'm right there with you, which is why we were discouraging, looking at
Touching it.
projected 23 money. But then, as Commissioner Rothstein is saying, there's a spectrum of concern there. If you said, can we take out $100? Sure, no worry. Can we take out 24 million? I'd be very worried.
right.
And what about another 500,000 from PFAS? Because that would knock that number from 780.
Well, let's start with
Yes,
this.
okay.
Let's start with this action first, I think. Then we can talk.
Okay.
What I'm trying to do is keep up with the
Sorry.
action.
sorry.
No. Yeah, we can talk then PFAS. Okay, so that's my motion to do is just shared. Taking 500,000 FY '22, 4 million from FY '23, and putting against capital projects beginning in FY '24. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay. Is there discussion?
I totally take the point that it is, based on that projection, it's a relatively, small amount given the projection. But again, I guess my concern is, again, not just the fact that we haven't actually realized those numbers yet, but given the staggering years, I mean, even if we do not factor Blueprint into the mix at all in this, I mean, we're looking at years ahead where, we're already 2.2 million in, debt next year, in negative next year. By FY '29, we're 15 million, and I would much rather have something on hand and I know we're working on putting together like what was it, Ted, the certain percentage we're going to carry over for the flexibility. What did you call that? So I mean, we have a reserve contingency fund, but you wanted to set aside a certain amount of money for future years for emergency.
It would just be a spot in the unassigned fund balance.
Just
Right, and so
5%.
I understand that we have that, but given an
We
emergency.
don't have it. We've never acted on that.
Okay, well, in that case, then, yeah, that doubles my concern with doing this, so.
Yeah, and Commissioner Bigliotti just said something there. For people listening, I want to make sure this is clear. You said at one point we'd be in debt 2.2, and then you changed it to 2.2 short. I want to make sure people understand, this is not like the federal government where they can operate at a deficit.
Right.
We have no authority to do that. When we get to that year, we will have to balance that budget. I don't know what it'll take to get there, but that has to happen.
Yep.
Right, and I apologize, I should have been a little clearer about that, so.
It's, people say it all the time.
But, so essentially, by law, we have to balance this year's budget.
Yes.
It would be smart to balance next year's and the next year's, but we're
Yes.
not required.
Correct.
But that's our target. Okay, any further discussion on the action that's on the table? There's a motion and there's a second. All those in favor? Aye. I apologize.
Yes.
Mike?
No.
No.
Okay. Take that action off. Thanks. I feel like it's the proverbial Robin, Peter, paying Paul,
Oh,
and
that's
that's,
was my,
you know what I mean? I feel
Right.
like
That was
that's
mine.
kind of the sense, I don't know if that's,
that was my analogy about going to the well. I
Yeah.
don't know if now might be a good time to figure out how we're gonna wrap things up today, but I just don't, if we're concerned about the future, you cannot give everybody what they want. And that includes salary increases, and that includes the school system. That's just my firm belief. We've got to go back and take a look at that again. There's always next year to try to give people what they want.
the,
And it's hard all over.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, no,
It's
please
hard
keep
all
going.
over in terms of salaries. I get it. But we're all, it's a tough economy and it's a tough job market, so.
the current salary increase that we have in place right now for our workforce is what?
4.5,
It was 5.5,
yes.
and we brought it
Or
down.
5.55?
A question on-
5.55.
On revenue. We talked about impact fees and how you've had them, you haven't had them, but it's very restricted. Is there ever been such a thing as an impact fee on commercial building? And is that just as restricted, or is that not even legal? The state would have to let us do it, or where is that?
We have not had one. I would imagine that we can. We would, for another impact fee, we would need state approval to do that. And yes, it would be just as restrictive. Impact fees, the very nature of impact
Okay.
fees,
And we're trying to attract commercial buildings.
and it would be different. Again, we were talking the other day about how you have to be able to tie charging and, I think it'd be hard to argue, for example, that you do a school impact fee for commercial industrial development. I don't know that you couldn't, but
Yep.
it'd be a
No,
big
I
question mark.
understand. Could you argue it for safety for fire and police?
Probably. Again, going back to that other conversation, it's aimed at providing, to maintain an existing level of service to a greater population. And one of the problems we have now is our population just isn't growing that fast.
Yes.
Right. I got one for you. Hypothetical or whatever, but no, it's not hypothetical. We're at 4.5. If we were to reduce it down to 4.25, what would the numbers look like? I would imagine it's significant.
Well, a percent was 568,000.
Oh,
So
really?
it's going to be,
Oh.
100
Not as
and-
much as,
Oh,
Yeah.
if that's the case, disregard. Yeah, I apologize.
And so what is our current bottom line? Still 895. Well, again, if we took some out of PFAS, however you pronounce that, that gets us down to 395, 925. And it does get us in a, a better position otherwise, and that is, money that we have at present.
Is the PFAS one-time money?
So that helps us with our current year, but obviously not.
But I understand, and the challenge is it's masking the budget. I mean, it's solving this year's, but it's masking the overall picture. And we did that, and it was really disturbing especially when you do it for past the current year. Oh, let's put this million, and all of a sudden it looks like you got zeros across the board, and you don't. You're
And Commissioner, I will totally concede that if we get to July and we have, that 24 million is actualized, I have no problem amending the budget to alter that, to plug that in with a budget amendment. I have no objection to doing that whatsoever.
I don't want to know if we want to open the budget to do something at that point. At that point, it would be hold off until FY '25, but, yeah, again, going back to a lot of what's said, and Commissioner Guerin has said it, as well. We don't want to mask the budget, I mean, we got to be honest, and we are. What's it going to take to do the things that we want to accomplish? What services, now, the only other approach right now that's clear, now there may be others, and what we can dig into it, is reducing some of what we already put on there, or adding revenue in addition to what we already have. And there is a significant reluctance to do that, since we've already touched one of those three that we have the authority to touch. We have the authority to go from 3.03 up to 3.2, or making an adjustment into property tax. I know you already know that collectively. I'm just kind of reiterating it to try to figure out, come up with a good idea somewhere. But
And so, can I ask, because I guess I wasn't totally understanding of, so going back to the recordation tax, I know I can't bring it up for a motion, right? Because the motion that I'd proposed
Yep.
for, what was it, 625 failed. But
so
again,
you
if,
could do 624. No, I'm kidding.
but again, if we are doing everything we can to prevent any kind of revenue increase on our end from hitting people with certain taxes on their end, again, it just strikes me that if people were moving into the county, and as Commissioner Kyler had mentioned, $800 or $1,000 on a $450,000, $500,000 home, if that gets us where we need to be this year and helps us beyond this year, and it is not affecting people in their daily lives, then I again, short of looking, trying to use money that we haven't realized yet, short of trying to balance out PFAS or taking money away from the sheriff or the school department, and again, short of increasing property taxes and short of increasing income taxes, at least the way that I'm looking at this right now, I don't see how we get to where we need to be short of another 50 cents or 25 cents in I guess it would have to be 50 cents in recordation. Because again, that's affecting people who are moving here, but it's not affecting somebody who's paying their taxes, whether it's property or whether it's income. And I hate saying that because, you know, even if you take the ideology out of this, everybody knows where I stand politically. Even if you remove all of that and looking at this from a purely practical and fiscal perspective, right? I still have serious concerns about raising the recordation tax at all because it is raising a tax. But if we're confronted with this dilemma, this almost intractable dilemma at this point, and we are trying to not affect people, again, in their daily, everyday lives, the food that's going on the table, the gas they're putting in the car, the money for sports equipment for their kids, right? Then it seems to me that the recordation tax is the prudent way the pragmatic way to pursue this.
And I agreed with you the last time, and I'm probably the most pro-growth person in the room, which makes it seem backwards, but I really think, and I looked at, okay, let's say I'm old, but I've bought 5 properties, so it would have happened to me 5 times. And a young Carroll County, my kids, if they want to stay in Carroll County, they might start out with a condo to a duplex to a single family. So they may play it a couple times, but I don't think it would have changed that decision. I really don't. So I don't think it stifles growth. And I think when you look at other counties that have transfer and recordation, we're, you said in the middle someplace, maybe.
Well, if you look at both,
Yes.
we're at the bottom end. I mean, not the lowest, but we'd be in the
But we're down,
fourth
yeah.
quartile.
Yeah, just before, because I want to be clear on that. Recordation and transfer taxes combined, compared to where we are, you believe we're on the bottom of that?
Right, not the bottom, but we'd be in
We would
the
be-
the bottom group.
In the very bottom group, okay.
So if we raised it $1, $1.50, we're not even going to be in the top half.
I would want to look before I
Yeah,
said
yeah,
that, but that'd be my
I don't think
guess.
so, but.
Taylor's going to try and answer that question.
Okay.
So, okay, it's comfort and acceptance.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, and it comes back to the bottom line right now. We're in the hole with what we did with the sheriff and the schools, which is safety and education, which are pretty important. And both of those, we didn't quite give them what they asked for. And I'd hate to see us give them less
Right.
of what they asked for. And, but like I say, there's other people that didn't get any of what they asked
I
for.
mean, community college,
Yes.
you know,
And I don't want to lose in, comparing what people asked for to what they got. There's a lot of agencies that didn't ask
Oh, I
for
know.
anything.
I understand.
right.
I
Oh, got
understand.
that.
And by cutting salary increases, we cut some of them.
Yes.
Right.
And that was a cut.
And that, I mean, what we did was, a year ago, was identifying a significant concern and problem, and we came up with a solution, and we don't want to go backwards. We can't afford to. We're already, probably at around an 8%, 9% vacancy rate in the county government workforce, give or take. I mean,
10.
10%, I mean, and we're still expected to do the services that we're doing. Nothing
Yep.
regarding our services have changed. And unless somebody can, tell us, or, we get good ideas and some interesting ideas about services. It's just not changing. So,
And I know I brought up the impact fees before, going into next year's budgeting. I think that is something that we seriously need to reconsider, because if new houses are being constructed and they're contributing nothing to the school system, that's problematic.
Unless we have an indication of a expectation of a rising school population, we're still left with the same problem, though,
Right.
of we won't be able to justify the use of the impact fees we're collecting. Now, if we get comfortable that we are on a course of ongoing, then we can rethink this. But you remember, I told you last time, with the number of building permits we're doing now, how much we would generate. It's not going to be a huge amount of money. It's not going to build a new school in South Carroll.
And I think school enrollment, I think it's on a trend to go up a little, but 3% a year, maybe? I mean, it's not like back when it was booming. It's
Right.
not, and like you said, the whole county's not growing.
right.
I know you get to this point now, and I know Commissioner Guerin said something about how do we wrap up. It can be very tempting to say, okay, we're not there, why don't we just take a break? But I just want to point out that Tuesday is it. There's nothing going to miraculously change between now and then. And we're really out of time then.
Okay,
You get to tell me when you're stopping, but
right.
I would encourage you to push on and see if we can't resolve some of this.
So, and I appreciate that.
We were at 0 when we started. Right, at 1 o'clock, so,
Yes.
I mean, we seem to be.
The sentiment on one side is increasing the recordation above 6. That would get us to where we need to be. Then there's the other of reducing requests that have been asked of us above and beyond what's already in the budget. I mean, again, I know I'm saying it like it's not new news. This is where we're at. I do not personally believe we can reduce services. I think we're at the bare minimum. And I understand sometimes there's a sentiment of one over the other, but I just think we're at bare minimum. I've crossed the state, and we do so much better. Our law enforcement is the best in the state. I mean, we are just so far ahead between our academy, our training, our deputies, the sheriff. I mean, we got it right. Their facilities may not be the best, but that's going to be changed through capital projects. Our education, I mean, I don't know, it's why I moved here, many years ago, and it's why many people move here because of our education being the best. And unfortunately, this attitude of we're a training ground for others, we've come a long ways in retaining. The quality of life, we got some incredible parks and sports programs like Manchester Wrestling and the rec parks, the rec councils. I mean, it's any one of those, if we adjust anything on any one of those, it's not that it'll crumble. It's just they're at their bare minimum. And by the way, we just professionalized the fire EMS, and we have this looming blueprint in front of us. I think the fire EMS, I think those positions are critical, because from day one, that's what I've been listening to. And fortunately, we have a chief that is very selfless and dedicated in bringing things together. So it comes down to what revenue are we willing to put in place to allow these services to continue? Salary decreases don't work in this case. It takes away very little, and the risk associated with it is extreme for the workforce that we do. Because we've got to remember, again, years ago, we reduced the workforce by 100 folks, and we didn't change any of the services we did. So, I mean, I'm willing to, and this is the first time that we've looked at taxes in 10-plus years and recordation in 20-plus years, to sticking to one of the tax streamlines, which is recordation. And if we were to do that and to get us where we need to go, we need to increase the recordation taxes. That's just
Is the current $6?
not necessarily plain and simple, because nothing's simple, but it's pretty plain. So there's got to be a willingness for us to step up and do that. I mean, I know on social media and other things, they'll say, stop raising our taxes. Well, we haven't raised our taxes. You know, now the state and others may have done things. We haven't. The value of our homes have gone up. That's ESTAT.
Thank you.
But, so,
Say that, yeah.
Nope, I'm wrong.
what's that?
We would be 8th in the state.
If we were to,
Make the recordation change and compare it against other counties with recordation and transfer tax.
so we would be in the top third. We'd be 8th. We have the 8th largest economy in the state. We got the best school system in the state, best community college. We have the 8th largest population in the state. So 8 seems to be a magical number.
Sorry.
Backward. I think you said it backwards.
I did. I misinterpreted what I was reading. We would be 8th from the bottom, so it is more
So,
like I was thinking.
Okay, so we're 8th in population, we're 8th in the budget, we've got the best
You were
schools,
testing us,
and we're
weren't you?
still,
Wait, I put a scale.
we're still on the bottom of the,
That was at 6.25 or 6.0?
that's 6
That was
point,
6.
That's at 6.
That's 6. If you did 6.25, I can,
Sure, that's,
that would be 6.
yeah, you're
Yes.
right.
That would put us at 9th.
Oh, 9th from the
On the
bottom?
bottom.
From the bottom, right, so 0 being the lowest number. The highest is Baltimore City, with the transfer tax and with the recordation that they have. So comparatively, they're 24th, if you will. We're on the lower end.
Okay, so if we went to 6.25, that would get us to where we need to go.
At $100,000.
Yeah.
Already found you the 100.
What's that?
So we already found the 100.
Again, this is the hard part. The easy part was in the beginning. What are your thoughts, Mike?
again, I'll use the same analogy I used earlier. I think we're going back to this well one too many times if we get to 6.25. I think we might have to look at that next year. I mean, again, we are very concerned about the out years and the unknowns related to Blueprint. I think we need to be thinking in those terms for this particular budget. I just disagree philosophically with some of the increases. There's always time for that next year if we can do it. but a 4% salary increase is a respectable amount, and providing the school system with almost 93% of what they asked for is nothing to be ashamed of either. And then we'd be where we need to be.
So we're currently at 4.5% salary?
Yeah.
No, we're at 4%.
We're at four, we're
Four
at
and a
four and a half, and
So Commissioner Garin, you would propose cutting another 0.5% out of the...
That's what I had done initially, because I could see this coming. I mean, we're not gonna, we're running out of revenue streams, if you will, in my opinion. And we keep using all these arrows, and I just wanna make sure we've got enough, we got a few arrows left for next year, because we might need them.
but we also, no, I don't.
I'm not saying everybody agrees with me.
No, I do disagree in the
Sure.
sense that our workforce will be depleted even more, and we will not be able to do the services. I mean, we are at 10% now vacancy rate. We have an aging workforce. We've already identified key positions that need to be filled above and beyond. We're not going to be able to do the service. Now, fortunately, the snow wasn't here this year, so we didn't have to spend money on that. But, you know, I think if you look at the workforce, and again, it's natural to compare. And you compare us into surrounding communities, we are so thin, and we do so much. The rec councils and park and recs, I mean, it's amazing what they do with how few people they have. Thank goodness for Carroll County and its volunteers. And I think if we go anything below what we're at right now, and I just threw the number out earlier just to see what the numbers were, I think we would be taking too much of a risk. And I think if we raised it to 6.25, we're taking a risk in being slapped around by folks also saying, hey, what are you doing to us? But if we're going to do it, we want to do it now as opposed to going to a cliff and then having to do something so dramatic. Because the last place we want to do it is, you know, in year 3 or 4 of our, you know, terms of responsibility, so.
We'd be raising it 25% in 20 years.
Deb, just out of curiosity, can you put the 6.25 up? I just want to see what that looks like.
But I definitely understand what you're saying, Mike.
Absolutely. And I understand what you're saying as
Yeah.
well.
I just hate to see the employees, I think the 1% off was semi-painful. And
Yeah.
I just think more than that, and understand what you're saying. Sometimes you have to.
And I mean, I was under the impression that the increases last year went a lot towards fixing some of these issues and some of those concerns with the workforce, and those were implemented. I mean, I work across a couple different states, and this is just the situation everywhere, unfortunately. If we can't win in a salary race with Montgomery and Howard and Frederick, and we shouldn't try. And then when we have that conversation, we forget a lot of people work in Carroll County that live in Pennsylvania for a reason as well.
Or Northern Virginia,
How
we
much-
can't compete.
How much
Right.
did the 5 to 6 do, and then the other quarter?
The
5 to 6 was
was
3.1.
3.1 million.
Okay,
And the other quarter, 775, is that?
Yes.
so,
Yeah, so we would,
okay, so now it's 775 more,
right,
so what's
we'd be in the black.
the bottom line?
100 out.
Right. Wish they could work
Right.
through.
Okay, 120.
You know, on the salary increases, just a couple of thoughts. In doing what we did, I don't think you'd find any of us would argue that we thought that would fix our problems. It would just make them not as bad. and no thought of keeping up with Montgomery County or even keeping up with Frederick or Baltimore County, just trying to keep the gap from being as big as it was.
I understand,
Yeah,
and I understand completely.
but,
I just
so,
think we're setting ourselves up for some tax increases if we're not careful.
well, that's
how
what
I
this
feel.
is.
Yep.
Right. I,
I don't want to do that. But you can't, you don't want to start reducing people's salary.
but, Tom, you asked to see this.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are a couple things. One, I'm not a fan of tax increases, and I'm not a fan of increasing fees, but I'm also not a fan of not funding things we need to fund. I'm also not a fan of taking money out of our employees' pockets after we're trying to keep them in a better place. It's the best way I can word that. With that thought, I also have to agree with Commissioner Guerin a little bit. I do see where he's coming from, and I don't disagree with that. That being said, I could support that, but, and this is the but, I have a list of things I want cut, and that would be the only way I would support that. I won't support that in any other light.
What do you want to see cut?
I can give you the whole laundry list now, or do you want it later?
Oh, now.
Okay, I'll go back through the list. 10,000 from Baltimore Economic.
So that, okay, bear with me. Wasn't there an email?
What's it called now, Commissioner? It's changed its name. Isn't that the one
It's
that's?
the GBC,
Yeah,
CBC.
Greater Baltimore.
GBC.
Greater Baltimore Committee.
$16,000 from Heart of Civil War.
How much do we give them now?
31, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's 31.
Okay, 7,500 from Magic. $7,500 from the Tech Council. $10,000 from Historical Society. $20,000 from Union Mills. $15,000 from the Arts Council, which is under Rec and Parks.
How much do we give them now?
What was the total, Mike?
40,
41,000.
Okay, you know what? Let
It needs to be
me
higher.
adjust that. Let's make that 20.
Yeah, that was on my list. I didn't realize.
I
it was
apologize, where is
41,000.
that?
It's buried in the Rec and Parks grants.
I hate using the word grants.
I don't know, however we want to word it.
Yeah.
Funded through them.
Is that it?
Let me see, what do we have there for the total? Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe that's what I've got. Let me see what's your
So-
total there?
Do we,
Well, but I was going to say, the, I mean, open for discussion on this? You want?
Sure.
Okay. I can handle all of that. The Greater Baltimore Committee is significant because of the work we've been doing over years, and especially our commitment to MACO. So taking I mean, we are at the table with them, which I think adds a lot of value. I'd like to see that stay full and take more out of this Hearts of the Civil War, you know, until proven otherwise, their importance. I think being a regional player in the Greater Baltimore Committee is much more important than the heart of the Civil War. You know, I'm not taking away from them, it's just,
I'm not either.
you know.
So we have, what, 31,000 was the heart of the Civil War?
Yes.
See, part of my problem is I don't know what we get out of that. I mean, you're
Which
telling
one?
us the Greater Baltimore.
Yeah.
So that and several other organizations
Right.
we're a part of,
Right,
we talk about a lot. I don't know what
know.
benefit Carroll County has.
I know.
So I think that needs to be explained to folks, including
Yep.
myself.
so, yeah, and so the Economic Alliance Greater Baltimore recently, this past year, merged with what's called the Greater Baltimore Committee, so it's one entity. You have, from Cecil County, Hartford County, Baltimore City, Anne Arundel, Howard, and Carroll County, all at the table. There's also additional business leaders that are on the board of directors, like the head of BGE, the head of LifeBridge, and the head of University of Maryland system, Dr. Perman. So talking about regional, economic issues, growth in the region, our economic developers from each one of those entities also have additional meetings to talk about growth and opportunities. So it's a collaborative, it's a collaboration of ideas, opportunities for those different jurisdictions, and it's surrounding Baltimore, because what impacts Baltimore impacts Baltimore County, impacts Carroll County. So, whether it's crime and other things, those are the issues we talk at the table. I've been attending it for different reasons in my past life, but then also now, and I find it, valuable. I don't know if it's a set amount or not. I thought it was that we were giving them, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, the answer we got back was they thought we had discretion.
That we have discretion on the GBC? Well, I mean,
The
I'm
answer we got back.
I'm willing to take risk and make it down to 10, and still, they're not gonna kick me off the table type of thing.
What is the total Arts Council?
41,000. 41,000 and, I'm sorry,
690, I think?
I think so, $41,690. Substantial amount.
Is that the Carroll Arts Council?
Yes.
Do we provide any funding to McDaniel College?
No.
Yeah, I'm not real comfortable with the Arts Council. And Union Mills, I think we should let be and make that part of the lease and the moving forward discussion. Yeah, I'm not comfortable. The rest are fine. I'm not comfortable with those two.
And I was going to ask about Union Mills, because the 20,000 is the sum total amount that they're given every year,
In cash.
in cash.
If we want to talk about paving and yard work and all that and what those total, that's a completely different number.
Yeah.
There's also something else in the same vein that I'm just going to mention. We, for many years now, several years, 10 maybe, have been giving $25,000 a year to shock trauma. The idea, I think, was that Carroll County residents benefit from that University of Maryland system, and so that it's a benefit to your residents. But that is another thing in the same vein.
It's discretionary.
Yes,
That's
it's
correct.
totally discretionary, that I thought you may not be aware of, that I should mention.
Right. My recommendation with that, it was put in place, is that we maintain it. It does I mean, there's only one shock trauma. And what they do for our community and our county is pretty amazing. You know, what it does for us, we're on the board, but that's really what it is good faith gesture by that 25,000. So I would like to keep that in place.
For shock trauma?
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I have no issue with that.
Okay. So the Arts Council, how much you want to take off it? I can't see.
These are,
numbers.
with the exception of Magic and the Tech Council, they're all about half, I believe.
Okay.
The
So what
Tech
you do-
Council and
okay.
Magic are all, that's what we
Okay,
have given them in the last couple of
Okay.
years, whereas the others are
Yeah.
pretty much
Okay.
cut in half. I think that's correct, Commissioner
Yep.
Gordon, more or less, right?
With the exception of the Historical Society, yes.
yeah.
Oh, is that the full
And then,
Historical Society?
No, that's a completely different amount. I just pulled 10 off the top of their 60.
Okay.
Oh, gotcha. Thank you,
And then
sorry.
you're leaving the chamber alone?
I'm going to leave them alone for right now. I think that's,
Yeah.
you know,
And then if we,
I didn't realize we actually gave the Chamber of Commerce money,
Yeah.
because I think the question was asked at one point, and the answer was no, we don't provide them with any funding, but we do. You give them about $10,000 a year.
yeah, we sponsor it, that event, that shark fin, or shark.
Carol
Tank
Biz
event.
Challenge.
Yeah.
And we are members.
And we are
There's
members.
some cost to that.
yeah, which is
Right.
totally separate from the 10,
Right.
yes.
You know, with the GBC, I'm fine with that. I do believe we do get something out of it, just like we do with other things. If I find that we, you know, are being asked for more, I'll bring it to your attention and we'll go from there. But, you know, yeah, we need to make decisions. So if you make those decisions and
Online.
you bring it back up to 6.25 now as recordation, what does that look like?
Negative 30.
Do we need to?
Well, that would add another 140, that would add 140,000 of revenue. 6.25 on recordation.
It's already in here.
Is
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Already
it's,
did that.
Oh,
it's up
oh,
here.
6.25 is already in there.
Yes.
Oh. Okay, so what's the bottom line then?
30.
30,000 out of it.
Okay.
Okay, if,
Okay, so, I apologize, let me go through this. Let's take all of those adjustments to the nonprofits that Commissioner Gordon recommended. Instead of going one by one, but all of them together. Is there a motion to accept those changes?
I move to accept those changes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any further discussion on this?
Point of order, so if we
Yeah.
vote on all of them together, though, what
Yeah.
happens if, I don't know if that's,
Let's see where we get to. I know what you're saying.
yeah, I don't
Are
want
you
You
to,
can always
talking
go
about-
back and do them
I don't want
individually.
to
is
shut
that the
debate
concern?
down on everything
Yeah,
at one
it's
fell
not-
swoop.
until you all vote on a proposed budget,
Right.
anything can change.
Yeah. So,
It doesn't matter how you got there.
and I know where you're going, because if we do pick one out, how does that, but just to get us through the work session, so we got a motion, got a second collectively. Is there any discussion on this? All in favor with those changes?
Aye.
Aye.
No, so 4-1. Okay, now, going to the recordation, adjustment from 6 to 6.25, with Commissioner Vigliotti not being allowed to say a word at this moment. Is there a motion to move it from 6 to 6.25? Okay, I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against?
No.
Okay, 4-1. It allows us to move forward, so I apologize, Ted. Did you have,
No, actually, it's good that you did that. If,
I'm doing what you tell me to do.
yeah,
Finally,
I don't
sorry.
know that this is the case, but if the board says, okay, yes, we're good with what we did there, I was just gonna say, don't worry about that $30,000. That's basically a rounding error. We will change something to make that zero if this is where we are.
And I would very much like to hear from whoever in the county can best speak for the nonprofit changes we made on any impacts we'll see because of what we made.
Now, they're each gonna have their own arguments. I don't know if there's anybody that's, one person to speak for them.
Couple different people, yeah.
And I bet you via emails, we're gonna be getting
Well,
them.
I don't know if those people are watching.
Oh, I bet you they're getting the word.
You can, oh,
It's in their
I'll
best
ask,
interest.
I'll ask Jack Lyburn and
Yeah.
Jeff Daggett. So those would be the two directors
Yeah,
that would be
that's
mostly coordinating with those organizations.
Well, isn't also Linda on the Civil War thing?
She is, although it's more tourism is sort of the
okay.
lead, but the planning's also involved, yes.
And I apologize, I have to meet an accountant, assuming she's still there.
Yeah, I think we're
Tax
wrapped up
times
with
are
it.
coming.
Well, okay, understood. And I'm not cutting you off, I just want to close out appropriately. We are scheduled to meet right now, Tuesday at 1 PM. So take a look at this. If I can ask Deb if you can send us changes that have been made, so we have it over the weekend.
Sure.
Allow us to look at it as opposed to just on Tuesday at 1. I would appreciate that. And is there any other guidance from you at this time, Ted?
Yep, if there's anything anybody has in their mind that would be a substantial change to this, is if you, the sooner you can tell us so we can be ready, the better. You know, if we get into other discussions on Tuesday like we did today, then I start to get worried about getting it done.
You get worried? No.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything from the backbench? Once again, thank you all for all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very
I
much.
need a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
Second.
I got a motion, guys. Second, all in favor?
Aye.